What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers, talking about my most embarrassing sports stories this week. But first, thank you as always for joining me, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. All right, let's go ahead and make a fool out of me. All right, so why am I talking about this stuff? Well, when I started doing my episode prep this week, it was really tough. I had several drafts of things I was going to talk about, but they were all kind of depressing because there's been some heavy stories in the sports world recently, people getting arrested, lawsuits, all that kind of stuff. I like breaking that stuff down for sure, but some weeks I just don't have it in me. It's too mentally draining. Sports are many things, that's why I love them and I love talking about them, but I just don't have the capacity this week to dive into that kind of stuff. So I'm going to pivot and talk about some fun stuff instead. If you're an OG listener from way back, some of these stories you may have heard, at least bits and pieces. Some you haven't, though. We've got new people here as well who don't know me in real life, so that's incredible. But this might be a good way to help them get to know me as well. First up, there is my infamous Patrick Ewing autograph story. So the New York Knicks used to hold their training camp here in Charleston for quite a few years in the 90s and early 2000s. I actually have a signed Allen Houston Olympic jersey somewhere as a result. Since they were holding training camp here, they'd also have a preseason game here as well at North Charleston Coliseum. This story takes place in 1995 when they faced the Washington Bullets. I'm 6 years old at the time, and my love of basketball is reaching levels that really shouldn't even be possible. I'd played my first season of organized basketball the previous winter, very poorly I might add, scoring 4 points the whole year. I'd practiced all summer on my very first big kid hoop. I was watching hours and hours of highlight videotapes, and my favorite team, the Houston Rockets, had just won their second straight NBA title. You could not find anybody who loved basketball more than Brandon Silvers. I used to take these basketball almanacs to school to read during breaks. I couldn't get enough. It was out of control. So my mom obviously noticed this and surprised me with tickets to my first ever NBA game. And off we go to North Charleston Coliseum. My mom, my grandmother, who we call Mimi, and a family friend, and I'm in awe. There they are. Everyone I've seen on TV, it's incredible. Most notably George Mirasan, who was 7'7" and taller sitting down than people were standing up. I'd never seen anything like it. The game is winding down to where the main players are done for the night because it's preseason and it's the guys who are trying to make the roster who are in the game now. And this family friend knew that I brought a Patrick Ewing basketball card with me, and he's like, hey, now would be a great time to get that signed. You want me to take it down there for you? Now, I was painfully shy until like the age of 22. So I sure as hell wouldn't go down there myself. But this guy, he had never met a stranger. He had a very public facing job. So it made sense to me that he could make this happen. This was my chance. I watch him make his way down to the bench area, and he's like gesticulating wildly and pointing up at me. And it's painfully clear, even to 6-year-old me, this is not gonna happen. Like, Patrick Ewing has rejected this like a Scott Skiles layup. So he comes back up to the seats, and we watch the rest of the game, and we get in the car to go home, and I look at this unsigned card and I burst into a hysterical, ugly cry. Now, this is notable to me because I also believe it's the birth of me being a hater, because I rooted so hard against Patrick Ewing after this. Now, in fairness to Patrick, it would have made more sense to send down a child than an adult man. Also, looking back, that adult man was certainly drunk. He had spent earlier portions of the game spilling all of his popcorn on everyone sitting below him, and I can't imagine that Pat has signed many autographs for drunk, grown-ass men. But still, fuck Patrick Ewing and the Knicks, respectfully. Now, while basketball has always been the love of my life, I did try other sports. So let's talk about why you never hear about my playing career in those sports. First up, let's address my soccer career. A little backstory if you're new here, but I had an awful social anxiety disorder from like 4th grade all the way until after I graduated high school, and it was starting to ramp up around this time, so I was on medicine for it, and the medicine combined with puberty not wanting to activate turned me from a tall, lanky kid to a short, chubby one. Now, don't get me wrong, I was still athletic, coordinated, had quick feet, all that, but I wasn't going to run for a long time. Short bursts were really all you were going to get from me. That mixture of attributes, as well as the ability to punt the hell out of a soccer ball, led to me being the goalie, which was great, except I hated it. I love offense. I love scoring. Playing goalie is the exact opposite of that, and my awful coaches wouldn't let me play in the field ever, even though we were awful, and it didn't matter. I should have just been out there having fun. Luckily for me, fate intervened. Another game, I was out there just trying to survive an absolute onslaught from the other team, and I sprained my wrist. Now, I say sprained, but it wasn't an actual sprain probably. It certainly hurt, but I also knew this was my chance. This was my opportunity. I couldn't possibly play goalie with a hurt wrist, but I could still play soccer. I'm playing this injury up like James Harden's about to do at training camp, to the point where I'm wearing a wrist brace just at home hanging out. I show up to the next game wearing the brace, and I'm like, hey, I'll play, but I clearly can't play goalie. And it was the last game of the evening, and it was super cold out, but that's okay because I'm built different, and I'm out there playing like Mbappe before Mbappe. And sure enough, boom, laser right into the back of the net. And obviously I'm hype as hell, and I do this elaborate celebration like a defensive back when the receiver's overthrown by 30 yards. And we probably lost 13-1, but whatever, it wasn't my fault. I can't play with these bums. My mom would sit in the car with the heat on during cold games because I guess she isn't built different. So I used my infamous short burst of speed to get out to the car as quickly as possible to talk about my first goal ever. And she's sleeping. Apparently the heat felt a little bit too good, and my play wasn't nearly as exciting as I'd hoped because she slept right through the goal. But hey, at least Mimi saw it, right? Wrong. Turns out my acting had been so good that she thought I wasn't going to play at all because my wrist hurt too bad, and hadn't bothered to come to the game after she got off work, which I think was probably the only sporting event of mine either one of them missed. I went right back to goalie the next game, and that was the only year I played soccer, so nobody that I know or care about saw my only goal ever. And yet that was somehow still better than my football career. Fast forward a couple years later, freshman year of high school, still dealing with the anxiety issues, still medicated, the testosterone I was supposed to be getting from puberty, still on layaway at Kmart. I'm at Academic Magnet High School and decide to go out for the football team. It's the perfect sport for a husky child such as myself. In my mind, I'm going to show up and play defensive line just like Javon Curse, aka the Freak. If you're unfamiliar, it's important to note that Javon Curse was nicknamed the Freak because while he was a defensive lineman, he was not a husky child. He was in fact 6'5", 265 pounds of pure muscle who ran a 4.4 40 and had a 37-inch vertical jump. Me at the time, I was like 5'5", 175 pounds, no noticeable muscle mass. But maybe I could aim for being the Javon Curse of the Academic Magnet High School football team, whose claim to fame was being in Sports Illustrated a year or two before I got there for losing to Hanahan 100-0. So I show up to my first practice, and I gotta be honest, I had no clue what I was doing. Not like I needed like Sandra Bullock to come teach me how to play. I knew football, but I didn't know how to put the pads on right, how heavy the pads would be, nutrition, conditioning, none of that. I also didn't know that apparently incoming freshmen had taken part in conditioning in the spring and early summer, so I'm showing up woefully unprepared. I barely had the strength to walk around in these shoulder pads. So it went about as you would imagine. They're like, okay, we're going to get warmed up now. We do some calisthenics. And then the coaches are like, all right, time for laps. Laps is in plural, multiple. I told y'all earlier, I was there for a short burst of speed. But we take off and I'm like 27 steps into it and I just start throwing up everywhere. Can't stop, won't stop. The coaches have to drag me off the field by my shoulder pads while I'm crying and throwing up. Just an absolutely embarrassing display on my part. But I told you, I'm built different. I show back up the next day, and guess what? I survived the conditioning thanks to a modified warm-up given to me by the coaches, as well as not eating several pieces of pizza before practice. We get to tackling drills. The Freak is back, first time through. Went through that thing like butter. Hanahan might only get 93 points this year. The coach is like, come here real quick. Jog over to him. He's like, hey, decent hit, but we got to work on that form a little bit. Get your elbows up higher, explode through, whatever. Okay, no problem. Next time through. Fractured my arm on the tackling dummy. Never in my life before or since have I heard of such an injury. The coach didn't even believe me when I told him something was wrong until I showed him how my hand was swelling up like Buddy Love when he was turning back into Professor Clump. How do you even get hurt on a tackling dummy? Does that make me a tackling dummy? I don't know, maybe. But I was smart enough to know never to carry my ass back on a football field ever again. Now, this next story is more fitness related than sports, but I was trying to get fit to play sports, so it counts. This was around the same time as the beginning and end of my football career. Now, I wasn't in football shape, but not for lack of trying. I'd actually been working out on my own, just not necessarily in an optimal way. I'd had such a bad middle school experience due to everything I'd been going through that I was determined to make the most of my high school years, which to me at the time meant being confident, ripped, star athletes, ladies love me, all that. So this was like early mid 2000s, and luckily I had the perfect role model for all of these things in one person, Nelly. He was everywhere at the time. He was dropping hit after hit. He was at all the celebrity all-star games dominating. He was in movies. He was that dude. He was also in a handful of men's fitness magazines talking about his various workouts, which is great news because if I just followed these workouts, I would eventually look and feel like Nelly. So I replicated them the best they could in my bedroom with 10-pound dumbbells. I'm doing these workouts pretty regularly, but I'm not really noticing a difference, but that's okay because you're always the last one to notice, right? Normally it's other people being like, oh, have you been working out? So I wasn't super concerned. I just needed to trust the process. Then one day it happened. I walk into the office at school and this girl is sitting in there. She does a double take and she says to me, hey, you look like that rap dude. And that was all I needed to hear. I didn't even wait for her to finish her thought. In my mind, I am busting through the cocoon of puberty into manhood to the sounds of Pimp Juice. I violently snap back into reality as my subconscious processes the entirety of her sentence, which was, hey, you look like that rap dude, Irv Gotti. Respectfully, Irv Gotti has never been asked about his workout routine, so this hurt. It also hurt because it was incredibly accurate. I don't even know why my brain allowed me to think anybody would have referred to Nelly at the time as that rap dude or said that I resemble him in any way, shape, or form. She wasn't even trying to be mean or insulting. It was simply a matter of fact. A very, very humbling one. However, that was not my last time being delusional. Eventually, I did get into great shape, and this last story takes place after that happens. I was still a teenager, but I was in college, and I used to play a lot of pickup basketball at Starrett Hall, and I was awesome. But my problem had flip-flopped as now I struggled to keep weight on. I was probably 160 pounds, which is 35 pounds lighter than I am now, but I was competitive as all hell, and I had a ton of heart. One particular day, Jarrell King is in there playing. He was a couple years older than me, I think, and he'd been a great football player at North Charleston, and I believe he was just about to head off to play at South Carolina. He played offensive line, and he looked like he played offensive line. Like 6'5", 6'6", 300 and something pounds, probably twice as much as I weighed. But that doesn't matter to me. It's whatever. But it matters to everyone else. So throughout the course of playing, everyone's getting out of his way. Not me, though. Again, I'm built different. Sure enough, this one play, he drives the lane, and everyone just splits apart like the Red Sea. But once again, not me, though. I'm going to jump with him. And I do. And he proceeds to slap me right on the side of the head with one hand and dunk on me with the other. I cannot explain to you the way my ears were ringing. And that's how I learned that no matter how much heart you have, make sure you have more brains. All right, that'll do it for this week's episode. Hope y'all got to know me a little bit better and had some laughs. I appreciate y'all watching, listening, supporting me the way that you do. Y'all have a great week, and I will catch y'all later.